Hyunwoo Kim stood in the communication chamber of the Galactic Council station. His hands moved across the control panel with practiced ease. The blue light from the holographic display cast shadows on his face. He had done this same routine hundreds of times before. Today felt different. The other ambassadors watched him from their observation pods. The Velkari ambassador floated in a crystal shell filled with methane gas. Her voice came through the speakers like breaking glass. "Human Ambassador Kim, your people have been avoiding our request for weeks." Hyunwoo kept his eyes on the display. Earth appeared as a small blue dot surrounded by data streams. His home world looked peaceful from this distance. He knew better. "Your colonies in the outer systems must be returned to proper galactic authority," said the Nethron representative. The gas-based alien's voice sounded like wind through caves. "Humans are too new to space travel. You cannot handle such responsibility," the Korth spoke next. Their hive mind sent thoughts directly into the translation system. "The outer worlds contain resources needed by established species. Humans waste what they do not understand." Hyunwoo finally turned to face them. These aliens had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years. They saw humans as children who had stolen their toys. For months, they had been pushing harder and harder. They wanted humanity's colonies. They wanted human technology. They wanted humans to bow down and accept their place as the newest and weakest species in the galaxy. "I have a message from Earth," Hyunwoo said quietly. The aliens settled into their pods. They expected another long speech about human rights and peaceful cooperation. They had heard it all before. Humans were always talking about peace and working together. The aliens found it amusing. Hyunwoo activated the recording device. The message from Earth had arrived 2 hours ago. It was shorter than usual. Much shorter. "This is the final communication from Earth to the Galactic Council," Hyunwoo read from the screen. His voice stayed calm and steady. "We tried to warn you about the path you were choosing. We offered friendship. We shared our knowledge. We asked only for respect in return." The Velkari ambassador made a sound like tinkling bells. She was laughing. "Humans and their dramatics," she said to the others. Hyunwoo continued reading. "The human species hereby formally withdraws from all galactic affairs. We will no longer participate in council meetings. We will no longer engage in diplomatic relations. We will no longer respond to communications." Now the aliens were paying attention. The Nethron's gaseous form swirled faster in its containment field. "What does this mean?" "It means we are done talking," Hyunwoo said. He looked at each alien in turn. The message continues. "Consider this our formal withdrawal from galactic affairs. What happens next we cannot be held responsible for." The Korth's thoughts buzzed through the translator. "Is this a threat?" Hyunwoo saved the recording and stepped back from the control panel. "The message is complete. That is all Earth has to say." The Velkari ambassador's shell pulsed with bright light. "Your people cannot simply leave the galactic community. There are treaties. There are agreements. There are responsibilities." "Not anymore," Hyunwoo said. He walked toward the exit. The aliens called after him, their voices rising in pitch. They demanded explanations. They made threats of their own. They promised consequences if humans did not return to the negotiating table. Hyunwoo stopped at the door. "You wanted to know what humans are really like," he said without turning around. "You're about to find out." The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. Meanwhile, light years away, Commander Lee Dae-ho sat in the command center of the Earth Defense Force headquarters. The room buzzed with activity. Officers moved between workstations. Screens showed star maps with human colonies marked in green dots. Lee's communication officer approached his chair. "Sir, Ambassador Kim has delivered the message. The aliens have been informed." "Good," Lee said. He pressed a button on his chair's armrest. Across the room, a large screen lit up with a single word: blackout. Lee spoke into his headset. His words went out on encrypted channels to every human colony in the galaxy. "This is Commander Lee Dae-ho of Earth Defense Force. Protocol blackout is now in effect. All colonies are to cut external communications immediately. Begin Phase 1 preparations, acknowledge receipt, and then go dark." One by one, responses came back from the outer worlds. New Seoul acknowledged. New Busan confirmed. The mining stations in the Kepler system responded. The research bases near Wolf 359 sent their confirmation. 47 human colonies across the galaxy received the order. Then silence. In her laboratory on Earth, Dr. Park So-jin watched the data streams from her computer screens. For 15 years, she had studied alien biology, alien technology, alien culture. Her team had learned how the Velkari created their crystal ships. They had discovered how the Nethron processed gases in their bodies. They had mapped the neural networks of the Korth hive minds. Now she was deleting it all. "Doctor, are you sure about this?" asked her assistant, Dr. Yoon Hae-won. "This research took decades to complete." So-jin's finger hovered over the final deletion command. "The aliens think they know us because we shared our knowledge freely. They think we are weak because we were generous. They made a mistake." She pressed the button. Terabytes of data vanished from the servers. Across the planet, other research teams were doing the same thing. Every piece of information about alien weaknesses, every detail about their technology, every secret humans had learned during years of peaceful cooperation was being erased from official records. But it was not being destroyed. It was being moved to servers that did not officially exist. The galaxy noticed the silence within hours. Communication networks that had carried human messages for decades went quiet. Trade requests went unanswered. Scientific data sharing stopped completely. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. The alien species met an emergency session. The Velkari accused humans of childish behavior. The Nethron suggested it was a negotiating tactic. The Korth believed humans were planning something, but they could not imagine what. Humans had always been the weakest species in the galaxy. What could they possibly do? High Arbiter Zelthon of the Velkari called the session to order. "The humans are clearly trying to force our hand," she said. Her crystalline form reflected the chamber's lights. "We should proceed with the original plan, claim their colonies while they sulk in silence." The other species agreed. Humans had thrown a tantrum and gone home. This actually made things easier. Now the aliens could take what they wanted without listening to endless speeches about fairness and cooperation. They began making plans to divide human territory. The Velkari would take the resource-rich worlds. The Nethron would claim the gas giants. The Korth would establish breeding colonies on the garden worlds. None of them wondered why the humans had seemed so confident in that final message. None of them asked what humans might have been preparing for during those months of increasing tension. None of them considered that a species capable of reaching the stars might have other capabilities they had kept hidden. The galaxy's three greatest powers had just made the biggest mistake in their long histories. They had confused human restraint with human weakness. They had mistaken human patience for human helplessness. In the darkness between stars, human ships that did not appear on any official registry began to move. In hidden bases that did not exist on any maps, weapons that violated several galactic treaties powered up for the first time. In secret facilities buried deep in asteroids, soldiers who had trained for a war nobody expected prepared for deployment. Humanity had gone silent. The galaxy celebrated. They should have been terrified instead. 3 months had passed since the last human transmission. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with excited conversation. Representatives from dozens of species filled the floating pods that surrounded the central platform. Today, they would divide the human territories among themselves. High Arbiter Zelthon of the Velkari called the meeting to order. Her crystalline body caught the chamber's light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. "The humans have made their choice," she announced. "They have abandoned their responsibilities. We must now take proper care of the worlds they can no longer manage." The Nethron representatives' gaseous form swirled in agreement. "Our survey teams have identified 17 worlds suitable for gas extraction. The humans were wasting these resources on foolish experiments." The Korth hive mind sent thoughts directly to the translation system. 43 worlds show potential for breeding colonies. Human settlements are small and can be easily relocated. Zelthon activated a holographic display showing human space. Green dots marked colonies. Blue lines showed trade routes. Red zones indicated resource-rich systems. It looked like a feast waiting to be consumed. "We will send colonization fleets to establish proper authority," Zelthon said. "The humans will learn that the galaxy has rules. Those who break the rules face consequences." None of the aliens noticed that their surveillance reports were 3 months old. None of them questioned why human worlds had stopped responding to long-range scans. They assumed human technology was simply primitive and unreliable. The first colonization fleet belonged to the Velkari. 200 crystal ships carrying 50,000 colonists departed for the human world of New Busan. The fleet commander, General Kethvar, had fought in a dozen campaigns. He expected easy victory against primitive human defenses. Meanwhile, Captain Yoon Ji-hai drifted in the darkness between stars. Her ship, the Silent Dawn, was painted black and ran on minimal power. She had been watching the aliens for weeks. Her crew of 12 moved through the ship like ghosts, speaking in whispers and hand signals. "Captain," whispered her sensor officer, Lieutenant Park Min-ho. "The Velkari fleet has entered the jump corridor. They will reach New Busan in 6 hours." Ji-hai nodded. "Send the coded transmission to Admiral Choi, pattern 7, encryption level maximum." The message that went out was shorter than a heartbeat. It looked like random stellar radiation to anyone who intercepted it. To human forces it meant, enemy approaching New Busan. 200 ships. Begin intercept pattern. Admiral Choi Min-ho received the signal aboard his flagship, the Phantom Strike. Around him, the bridge crew worked in dim red light. His fleet of 24 ships had been hiding in the shadow of New Busan's outer moon for 2 weeks. They had been waiting. "Signal all ships," Choi said quietly. "Ghost protocol is active. Move to intercept positions." The human ships came alive. But these were not the vessels the aliens remembered from their intelligence reports. During the 3 months of silence, humanity had been busy. Very busy. The ships that moved toward the Velkari fleet looked wrong somehow. They bent light around their hulls, making them hard to see even when they were right in front of you. Their engines produced no heat signature, their weapon systems charged without creating energy readings. They had become invisible predators. General Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Throne. Through the transparent walls of his command center, he could see the fleet spread out in perfect formation. 200 ships moving as one toward an easy conquest. "General," reported his sensor officer, "we are detecting no human fleet movements, no defensive preparations. The colony appears undefended." Kethvar felt satisfaction flow through his crystalline form. Humans had run away rather than fight. It proved what the Velkari had always believed about these newcomers. They were weak. They were cowards. They did not deserve the worlds they claimed. "Prepare for orbital insertion," Kethvar commanded. "We will establish control of the system within the day." The Velkari fleet entered the New Busan system in perfect formation. Their crystal hulls reflected the system's star, creating a beautiful light show. They had done this many times before on many worlds. It was always the same. Show overwhelming force. Accept surrender. Begin colonization. This time was different. The attack came without warning. Space itself seemed to tear open as human ships appeared from nowhere. They materialized inside the Velkari formation, their weapons already firing. But these were not the simple projectile weapons the aliens remembered. Beams of twisted energy struck the crystal ships. The Velkari hulls, strong enough to resist asteroid impacts, cracked like eggshells. The energy weapons seemed to reach inside the ships and explode from within. "What is happening?" Kethvar shouted as his flagship shook. "Where did they come from?" His sensor officer's voice was high with panic. "I cannot track them. They appear and disappear. Our targeting systems cannot lock onto them." The human ships moved like dancers in 3-dimensional space. They would appear, fire a devastating volley, then vanish before the Velkari could return fire. When the aliens tried to target them, their weapons passed harmlessly through empty space. Captain Yoon Ji-hai watched the battle from her hidden position. Her ship's advanced sensors showed her the truth the aliens could not see. The human ships were not disappearing. They were shifting slightly out of normal space-time, becoming untouchable while they repositioned for their next attack. "Remarkable," whispered her science officer, Dr. Kim Soo-jin. "The phase shift technology actually works in combat conditions." Ji-hai smiled grimly. "The aliens taught us about dimensional manipulation when they shared their advanced physics with us. They just never imagined we would improve on their theories." The Velkari fleet tried to fight back, but it was hopeless. Their weapons were designed to fight enemies that obeyed normal physics. The human ships ignored those rules entirely. They appeared inside Velkari defensive formations. They fired through Valkyrie's shields as if the shields did not exist. They moved at angles that should have been impossible. General Kethavar watched his fleet die around him. In 15 minutes, he had lost half his ships. The colonists aboard those vessels were gone forever, their crystal forms shattered by weapons that should not exist. "Order retreat," he commanded. "All ships emergency jump to hyperspace." But the humans had thought of that too. As Valkyrie ships tried to escape, they found their jump drives would not function. Something was interfering with their ability to enter hyperspace. They were trapped in normal space with predators that could strike from any direction. One by one, the crystal ships went dark. Emergency pods launched from dying vessels, but even those were hunted down and destroyed. The humans were taking no prisoners. They were sending a message. Admiral Choi watched the final Valkyrie ship explode in a burst of rainbow light. His fleet had not taken a single hit. Not one human ship showed even minor damage. It had been less than a battle than an extermination. "Scan for survivors," he ordered. "Make sure there are no escape pods, no emergency beacons, no witnesses." His sensor officer worked quietly for several minutes. "All clear, Admiral. No Valkyrie life signs detected in the system." "Good." Choi activated his command console. "Send Ghost Squadron back to hiding positions. Clean up all debris. I want no evidence that this battle ever took place." The human ships went back to work with practiced efficiency. Energy beams vaporized the remains of Valkyrie vessels. Tractor fields gathered scattered metal fragments. Within 2 hours, the new Busan system looked exactly as it had before the battle. Except for one change. The human colony on New Busan had grown. New defensive installations had appeared on the planet's surface. Advanced weapon platforms orbited the world. The humans had not abandoned their colony. They had been preparing it. Back on the Galactic Council Station, the aliens waited for news of victory. The Valkyrie colonization fleet should have taken control of New Busan by now. They should have sent word of their success. Instead, there was only silence. "Communications error," suggested the Nethron representative. "These outer systems often have interference problems." High Arbiter Zelthon agreed. "General Kethavar will report when the situation is stable. The humans are probably fleeing to other systems. It may take time to establish proper control." The aliens continued planning. The Korth would send their breeding fleet next. The Nethron would follow with their gas extraction ships. Soon, human space would be properly managed by superior species. None of them suspected the truth. The Valkyrie colonization fleet was not establishing control. It no longer existed. 200 ships and 50,000 colonists had been erased from the galaxy, as if they had never been born. Captain Yoon-ji Hai prepared her ship for the next phase of observation. Other alien fleets would come. Other battles would be fought. But the pattern was now established. The aliens would send their forces into human space expecting easy victory. Instead, they would find death. The galaxy's 3 most powerful species had declared war on humanity without realizing it. They still thought they were dealing with primitive colonists who could be bullied into submission. They had no idea they were facing an enemy that had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. In the darkness between stars, more human ships began to move. The Valkyrie had been just the beginning. Dr. Kang Eun-ji sat in her private office deep beneath Seoul. The room had no windows, no decoration, and no connection to the surface world. For 20 years, she had studied alien minds. She understood how they thought, how they made decisions, and most importantly, how they saw humanity. Her final report lay open on the desk. 300 pages of psychological analysis, cultural evaluation, and strategic assessment. Tomorrow she would delete all copies and pretend this research had never existed. But tonight, she read through it one more time. "They still see us as we were when we first reached the stars," she had written. "In their minds, humans are the frightened children who begged for membership in the galactic community. They cannot imagine that we have changed, grown, learned. This blindness is our greatest weapon." A soft chime indicated an incoming message. The text was brief. "Execute protocol fade. All teams report completion within 72 hours. Yoon-ji smiled and closed the report. Across the galaxy, Human agents were about to begin the next phase of the operation. The aliens thought the disappearance of the Velkari fleet was an accident or equipment failure. They were about to learn otherwise. On the gas extraction station orbiting Kepler 442b, Supervisor Velthon of the Nethron watched his workers harvest methane from the planet's atmosphere. The operation employed 3,000 Nethron and produced enough gas to fuel their homeworld cities for a month. It was a profitable and peaceful assignment. Velthon never noticed the human maintenance worker who joined his crew 2 months ago. The worker, who called himself Kim Dong-hyun, did his job efficiently and kept to himself. He spoke perfect Nethron language and understood their equipment better than most natives. Dong-hyun was not really a maintenance worker. He was Captain Kim Dong-hyun of Human Special Operations. His team had spent weeks studying every system on the station. They knew where the critical components were located. They knew how to make the station's destruction look like an accident. All teams, this is Shadow Leader. Dong-hyun whispered into his hidden communicator. Begin final phase. Across the station, 12 human agents moved into position. They looked like ordinary workers, but each carried equipment that could disable entire sections of the facility. They had been preparing for this moment for months. The attack began at shift change when most workers were moving between sections. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, trapping Nethron in isolated compartments. Life support systems failed in critical areas. The main reactor began an uncontrolled shutdown that would destroy the station in minutes. Supervisor Velthon tried to activate the emergency communication system, but it had been sabotaged. He tried to launch escape pods, but their controls would not respond. In growing panic, he realized that every safety system on the station had been turned against his people. The last thing Velthon saw was the maintenance worker he had barely noticed for 2 months. The human stood calmly in the control room, watching displays that showed the station's death. There was no hatred in the human's eyes, no anger or excitement. Just cold professional efficiency. Why? Velthon gasped as his breathing apparatus failed. Because you took our silence for surrender. Dong-hyun replied quietly. You made a mistake. The Kepler 442 gas extraction station exploded in a burst of superheated methane. The blast was visible from 3 star systems away. 3,000 Nethron died instantly. No distress signal escaped. No evidence survived to show what had really happened. Similar operations unfolded across alien space. A Korth breeding facility in the Tau Ceti system suffered complete life support failure. All 50,000 inhabitants died when their atmospheric processors stopped working. Investigation would later show that critical components had simply worn out at the same time. An impossibly unlucky coincidence. A Velkari mining operation in the Vega system lost contact with the galaxy when an asteroid struck their communication array. The asteroid impact was so precise it looked almost deliberate. But who could guide an asteroid with such accuracy? Certainly not the primitive humans who had barely learned to travel between stars. Captain Shin Taemin guided his ship, the Nightfall, through the debris field where a Korth transport convoy had been destroyed. According to the official reports, the convoy had suffered multiple engine failures while passing through an asteroid field. The engines had exploded simultaneously, destroying all 12 ships and their cargo of rare minerals. The truth was different. Taemin's team had used gravity manipulation technology to alter the asteroid's orbits. They had turned the entire field into a trap, then waited for the Korth convoy to enter their kill zone. The alien ships had been crushed by precisely aimed rocks moving at orbital velocity. Any survivors? Asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Oh Hae-won. Negative, Taemin replied, studying his sensor readings. Clean sweep. No witnesses, no evidence, no trace of our involvement. Hae-won nodded as she worked at her station. She was not really a ship's officer. Her real job was cyber warfare, and she had been very busy during the months of human silence. While the aliens planned their conquest of human space, she had been conquering their communication networks. Every message between alien worlds now passed through servers that humans secretly controlled. Military reports were delayed or lost entirely. Supply requisitions were rerouted to wrong destinations. Emergency communications simply vanished into the void. The aliens noticed the problems, but they blamed equipment failures and solar interference. They never suspected that their entire communication network had been compromised by the same species they considered primitive and harmless. Status report. Taemin requested. Network infiltration is 96% complete, Haiwan replied. We now control data flow between all major Velkari installations. Nethron networks are 87% compromised. Korth systems are more difficult because of their hive mind connections, but we have achieved 63% penetration. Taman smiled. Excellent work. Phase 3 can begin on schedule. Phase 3 was about to teach the aliens a lesson they would never forget. For months they had been losing ships, stations, and colonies to what they thought were accidents. Soon they would understand that nothing had been accidental. On the Korth homeworld of Nexus Prime, the central mind felt disturbed. Reports from the outer colonies had been inconsistent and alarming. Too many facilities were going silent. Too many supply convoys were disappearing. The individual Korth units in those areas reported mechanical failures and equipment problems, but the pattern was suspicious. The central mind activated its deepest analytical protocols. It reviewed data from the past 3 months, looking for connections the individual units might have missed. What it found made the entire hive mind recoil in shock. Every disaster, every failure, every disappearance had happened in areas where humans had previously operated. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. The Korth were under attack and they had not even realized it. Emergency signals went out across Korth space, but many of them never arrived. Those that did reach their destinations were garbled or incomplete. The communication network that had served the Korth for centuries was failing at the worst possible moment. Similar realizations were occurring on Velkari and Nethron homeworlds. Military commanders reviewed their losses and saw patterns that should have been obvious. Scientists analyzed the debris from destroyed facilities and found evidence of sabotage. Intelligence officers tried to send warnings, but their messages disappeared into corrupted data streams. The 3 greatest species in the galaxy were finally beginning to understand the truth. The humans had not withdrawn from galactic affairs. They had declared war. A war unlike anything the aliens had experienced before. This was not a conflict of fleets meeting in open space. This was not armies conquering worlds through direct assault. This was something far more terrifying. Invisible enemies striking from the shadows, turning the galaxy's own infrastructure against itself. High Arbiter Zelthon called an emergency session of the Inner Council. The chamber's usual grandeur felt hollow now, surrounded by reports of destruction and failure. Representatives from all 3 major species attended, their forms tense with worry. The humans are responsible, Zelthon announced without ceremony. The pattern is clear. Every loss, every disaster, every failure has occurred in systems where humans previously operated. The Nethron representative's gaseous form swirled with agitation. Impossible. Humans lack the technology for such operations. They are barely capable of interstellar flight. Then explain the evidence, the Korth hive mind demanded through the translation system. Explain why our losses began precisely when humans went silent. Explain why our communications are failing. Explain why our enemies seem to know our every move. Zelthon activated the chamber's main display. Star charts showed the locations of every disaster, every disappearance, every suspicious failure. The pattern was undeniable. A circle of destruction surrounding human space, growing larger with each passing week. The humans spent decades among us, she said slowly. They learned our languages, studied our technology, mapped our territories. They gained our trust and we gave them access to everything. The awful truth settled over the chamber like a poisonous cloud. The aliens had welcomed humanity into their civilization. 6 months after humanity went silent, High Arbiter Zelthon stood before the greatest military assembly in galactic history. 2,000 warships filled the space around the Galactic Council station. Ships from every major species, every minor power, every civilization that had ever feared the growing human presence in the galaxy. The crystal ships of the Velkari reflected starlight in rainbow patterns. The biomechanical vessels of the Korth pulsed with organic energy. The Nethron fleet looked like floating cities, their massive hulls designed for long-range warfare. Dozens of other species had contributed their finest warships to this ultimate display of galactic power. Today, we end the human problem once and for all, Zelthon announced to the assembled fleet commanders. Her voice carried across thousands of communication channels, reaching every ship in the Armada. For too long, we have allowed these newcomers to mock galactic authority. No more. Admiral Kolthek of the Korth spoke through the hive mind connection. Our scouts report minimal human fleet activity near their home system. They appear to be concentrated around their birth world, probably hoping we will negotiate rather than fight. The Nethron fleet commander added his analysis. Intelligence suggests the humans have perhaps 50 ships defending their system. Against our 2,000 vessels, they cannot hope to survive. We will crush their resistance in minutes. Zelthon felt satisfaction flow through her crystalline form. The humans had been clever with their sabotage operations, but cleverness would not save them against overwhelming force. Today would prove that established galactic powers could not be challenged by upstart species who had barely learned to leave their homeworld. All fleets, prepare for jump to human space, she commanded. We will end this war where it began, at Earth itself. The massive armada engaged their faster-than-light drives simultaneously. Space twisted around 2,000 ships as they disappeared from normal spacetime, heading for the Sol system and the final confrontation with humanity. Fleet Admiral Bae Sung-ho watched the approaching alien fleet from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vigilance. His command center was quiet and calm, staffed by officers who had trained for this moment their entire careers. Around him, holographic displays showed the disposition of human forces. 50 ships. The aliens had counted correctly. 50 human vessels waited at the edge of the Sol system to face the largest military force in galactic history. To any observer, it looked like suicide. Admiral, reported his sensor officer, Commander Park Jun-seo, enemy fleet dropping out of hyperspace. 2,037 vessels confirmed. They are maintaining formation as expected. Sung-ho nodded calmly. Excellent. Signal all ships. Execute Battle Plan Omega. Full activation of all systems. Across the human fleet, ships that had appeared ordinary began to transform. Weapon ports opened to reveal massive energy cannons. Shield generators activated, surrounding each vessel in a shimmering barrier. Hull plating shifted and reconfigured, optimizing armor protection for combat. But the most dramatic change was invisible to normal sensors. Chief Engineer Lim Da-young watched her displays as the experimental defensive systems came online. For months, her team had worked to perfect technology based on principles the aliens had dismissed as impossible. Dimensional phase barriers at full strength, she reported. All ships showing optimal field generation. The alien weapons should pass harmlessly through our hulls. The alien fleet approached in perfect formation, their commanders confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage. 2,000 ships against 50. The humans had chosen to make their final stand in their home system, exactly as predicted. High Arbiter Zelthon opened a communication channel to the human fleet. Human vessels, you are outnumbered 40-1. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Continue to resist and we will make your species extinct. Admiral Bae Sung-ho responded with calm professionalism. Galactic Fleet, you have entered human space without permission. You have threatened our civilians and our homeworld. Leave now and we will allow you to depart safely. The alien commanders laughed. 40-1 odds, and the humans were still making threats. It proved that these creatures were too stupid to understand their situation. Your arrogance ends here, Zelthon replied. All ships open fire. Destroy the human fleet. 2,000 alien vessels unleashed their weapons simultaneously. The combined firepower was enough to crack a planet's crust and boil its oceans. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, and exotic matter weapons filled the space between the fleets. The devastating barrage struck the human ships directly. The aliens watched their sensors, waiting to see the destruction of the pathetic human fleet. Instead, they saw something impossible. The human ships sat calmly in space, completely unharmed. The most powerful weapons in the galaxy had struck them without effect. The energy beams had passed through their hulls like light through glass. The kinetic projectiles had simply vanished upon impact. What happened? Demanded Admiral Kolthek. Our weapons scored direct hits. Impossible, the Nethron commander gasped. Nothing can withstand that much firepower. Admiral Bae Sung-ho smiled as he watched the alien confusion. All ships, return fire. Show them what human weapons can do. The human fleet opened fire with weapons the aliens had never seen before. Gravity manipulation beams reached out across space, creating crushing gravitational fields around enemy vessels. Ships designed to withstand normal combat were compressed into dense balls of metal and flesh. Energy weapons that bent spacetime itself struck the alien fleet. The beams passed through shields and armor as if they did not exist. detonating inside ship hulls and turning entire vessels into expanding clouds of plasma. Most terrifying of all were the kinetic weapons. They accelerated projectiles to significant fractions of light speed, each impact releasing the energy of nuclear explosions. Alien ships simply ceased to exist when these weapons struck them. The perfect alien formation collapsed in minutes. Ships scattered in all directions, their commanders screaming orders that no one could follow. The disciplined fleet became a mob of terrified survivors trying to escape weapons that ignored every defense they possessed. Captain Yoon Ji-hee, now commanding a squadron of the new stealth destroyers, watched the battle from her position flanking the alien fleet. Her ships had been waiting in dimensional phase, invisible and untouchable, until the moment came to strike. "Ghost Squadron, begin hunter-killer operations," she commanded. "Prevent any enemy ships from escaping." Her 24 vessels materialized around the fleeing aliens like wolves among sheep. The enemy ships found their escape routes blocked by impossible weapons and unbreakable barriers. Those that tried to jump to hyperspace discovered their drives had been sabotaged during the months of human infiltration. High Arbiter Zelthon watched her mighty fleet die around her. In 30 minutes, she had lost over half her ships. The humans were using technology that should not exist. Weapons that violated known physical laws, defenses that made their vessels invulnerable. "How is this possible?" she demanded of her science officer. Humans were barely capable of interstellar flight. How did they develop such advanced technology? The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Bae Sung-ho opened a communication channel to all surviving alien ships. "You taught us," he said simply. "For decades, you shared your knowledge freely because you thought we were too primitive to understand it. You were wrong." The horrible truth crashed over the alien commanders like a collapsing star. The humans had not stolen their technology. They had been given it willingly. Every physics lesson, every engineering principle, every scientific theory the aliens had shared with their primitive neighbors had been turned into weapons of impossible power. "You gave us dimensional manipulation theory," Sung-ho continued. "We used it to create phase shift barriers and stealth systems. You taught us about exotic matter interactions. We turned that knowledge into weapons that ignore your defenses. You showed us how to bend space-time. We learned to create gravity fields that crush your ships like tin cans." Admiral Kolthek's voice shook with rage and fear. "We trusted you. We welcomed you. We treated you as friends." "Yes," Sung-ho agreed. "And we tried to be friends. We offered you genuine cooperation and mutual respect. You responded with threats and demands for submission. You chose war. Now you will see what war with humanity truly means." The battle continued for 6 more hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The alien fleet that had entered human space with such confidence was systematically destroyed by 50 human ships. The survivors who managed to escape carried a message from Admiral Sung-ho. "Tell your governments what you saw here today," he said. "Tell them that humanity offered friendship and received contempt in return. Tell them that we tried to warn them, but they would not listen. Tell them that this is what happens when you mistake human restraint for human weakness. Of the 2,000 ships that had attacked Earth, fewer than 50 escaped to tell the tale. The greatest military force in galactic history had been shattered by an enemy they had completely underestimated." As the last alien vessel fled into hyperspace, Admiral Bae Sung-ho turned to his communication officer. "Send a message to all human colonies," he ordered. "Operation Blackout is complete." The survivors of the Great Fleet limped back to their homeworlds carrying news that would shake the galaxy to its core. Admiral Kolthek of the Korth arrived at Nexus Prime with only 12 ships from his original force of 800. His report sent shockwaves through the hive mind consciousness that connected his entire species. The humans were never weak, he reported to the central mind. They were never primitive. They were waiting, learning, preparing for this exact moment. Similar scenes played out across alien space. Velkari crystal palaces rang with emergency alarms. Nethron gas cities buzzed with panicked communications. Dozens of minor species received fragmentary reports from their few surviving ships. The message was always the same. Humanity had revealed itself as the galaxy's apex predator. High Arbiter Zelthon floated in her recovery chamber. Her crystalline form cracked and dim from the trauma of battle. She had lost everything. Her fleet, her authority, her understanding of the galaxy itself. Through her damaged communication array, she sent a message to the emergency session of the Galactic Council. "The humans are coming," she whispered. Prepare for the end of our civilization. 3 days after the destruction of the Great Fleet, Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim returned to the Galactic Council station. But he did not arrive in the small diplomatic shuttle the aliens remembered. Instead, he came aboard the Sovereign, a human dreadnought that made the station's defensive weapons look like children's toys. The massive ship dwarfed the Council station itself. Its hull was black as space and seemed to bend light around its edges. Weapon ports studded its surface like the eyes of some ancient predator. When it requested docking permission, no one dared refuse. The council chamber fell silent as Kim walked through the entrance. The same aliens who had dismissed humanity months ago now shrank back in their observation pods. The Velkari representative's crystal shell was completely dark. The Nethron's gaseous form had condensed into the smallest possible volume. The Korth's thoughts buzzed with incoherent fear. "Honored representatives," Kim said with perfect politeness, "I bring greetings from the human government and an important message about the galaxy's future." He activated the chamber's holographic display. Instead of showing human territory as a small collection of frontier worlds, the new map revealed the truth. Human ships surrounded every major alien world. Human bases had been constructed in secret throughout the galaxy. Human agents had infiltrated every government, every military, every communication network. For months, you have been wondering why your ships disappear, why your communications fail, why your carefully planned operations collapse into disaster. Kim continued. The answer is simple. You are no longer in control of this galaxy. A weak voice came from the Velkari pod. What do you want from us? Kim smiled gently. Peace, cooperation. The same things we asked for when we first joined this council decades ago. The same things you refused to give us. President Han So-young appeared on the chamber's communication screens, broadcasting from Seoul. Her image was transmitted simultaneously to every major world in the galaxy. When she spoke, her words carried the authority of a species that had just proven its dominance through overwhelming force. Citizens of the galaxy, she began. For too long, a small group of established powers has controlled galactic affairs. They have decided who could explore new worlds, who could access resources, who deserve to be treated with respect. This age of arbitrary authority is ending. The alien representatives watched in growing horror as Han So-young outlined humanity's new position in galactic affairs. Earth would not conquer alien worlds or enslave alien populations. They had no interest in ruling through fear or oppression, but they would ensure that the galaxy's resources and opportunities were distributed fairly among all species. Trade will continue as before, she explained. Scientific cooperation will be expanded. Cultural exchange will flourish. But it will happen as partnerships between equals, not as relationships between masters and servants. Colonel No Min-jae stood on the bridge of the battleship Retribution, watching his display screens show human fleets arriving at every major alien world simultaneously. The operation had been planned for months and executed with perfect precision. Not a single alien government had been given time to prepare resistance or negotiate terms. All fleets report successful arrival, his communication officer announced. No hostile actions detected. The aliens appeared to be waiting for instructions. Min-jae nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. Broadcast the standard message to all planetary governments. Across the galaxy, alien leaders received the same communication. The human fleets had not come to destroy or conquer. They had come to ensure compliance with the new galactic order. Any species that chose to work within the new system would find humanity to be generous allies. Any species that chose resistance would face the same fate as the Great Fleet that had dared to attack Earth. The transition happened faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, the old power structures collapsed and reformed around human authority. The Velkari surrendered their monopoly on rare crystal technology. The Nethron opened their gas extraction secrets to all species. The Korth allowed independent observers to monitor their breeding programs. Dr. Park So-jin reopened her xenological research facilities. But now the situation was completely reversed. Alien scientists came to her laboratory seeking to understand how humanity had advanced so far beyond their expectations. She welcomed them with genuine warmth, offering tea and friendly conversation, while carefully avoiding any mention of humanity's most sensitive secrets. Your species showed remarkable adaptability, she explained to a visiting Velkari researcher. We simply built upon the knowledge you so generously shared with us over the years. The alien scientists' crystalline form flickered with confused patterns. But the weapons you used, the defenses, the coordination, it should have taken centuries to develop such technology. Sojin smiled mysteriously. Perhaps your assumptions about human capabilities were incomplete. She did not mention the secret research programs, the hidden military projects, or the decades of preparation for this exact scenario. Some truths were better left unspoken. The galaxy would be more peaceful if its inhabitants remembered that humanity's true capabilities remained largely unknown. Captain Yoon Ji-hee, now promoted to admiral, patrolled the outer rim systems in her upgraded flagship. Her mission had evolved from reconnaissance to peacekeeping, but her ship still maintained its stealth capabilities and devastating weapons. The galaxy needed reminders that human restraint was a choice, not a weakness. Admiral, her sensor officer reported, long-range scouts are detecting unusual activity in the Rigel sector. Appears to be a coalition of minor species attempting to establish an independent military alliance. Ji-hye considered the report carefully. Some species would always test the boundaries of the new order, hoping to find weaknesses they could exploit. Set course for Rigel. It seems we need to deliver another educational demonstration. Her fleet moved silently through hyperspace, invisible predators heading toward their unsuspecting prey. The lesson would be brief and decisive. The galaxy's smaller powers needed to understand that challenging human authority was not a viable option. Years passed, and the galaxy settled into its new equilibrium. Trade flourished under human oversight. Scientific advancement accelerated as knowledge flowed freely between species. Conflicts that might have erupted into wars were resolved through arbitration and negotiation. The old galactic powers found their new roles difficult to accept, but they adapted. They had no choice. Humanity had demonstrated beyond question that resistance was futile. Better to prosper under human protection than face extinction through human wrath. But in the darkest reaches of space, beyond the established shipping lanes and colonial territories, ancient powers stirred. Species that had withdrawn from galactic affairs millennia ago began to take notice of the dramatic changes in the balance of power. Some were curious about these remarkable humans. Others were concerned about the implications of such rapid change. Deep in her command bunker beneath Seoul, President Han So-young reviewed reports from humanity's most distant scouts. The galaxy was larger and more complex than anyone had realized. The established powers they had defeated were not the oldest or most dangerous inhabitants of their local region of space. Ma'am, her intelligence chief reported, long-range probes are detecting significant activity beyond the galactic rim. Energy signatures suggest technology far more advanced than anything the Velkari or Korth possessed. Han So-young studied the data with interest rather than concern. Humanity had spent generations preparing for one war. If necessary, they would spend generations preparing for the next one. Continue monitoring, she ordered, and begin preliminary analysis of potential countermeasures. We have achieved peace in our local region, but the universe is vast. There may be other challenges ahead. The galaxy had learned to live under humanity's watchful protection. Children of dozens of species grew up in a universe where conflicts were resolved through dialogue rather than warfare, where resources were shared rather than hoarded, where the future held promise rather than fear. But the children of Earth remembered their history.